My mother's words cut through the already stifling silence of our dinner like a knife. The fork in my hand froze, then clattered onto the plate, echoing sharply in the small suburban Columbus kitchen. I was 24, my name is Lena, and in that moment, I realized the distance between me and my family had never been greater. I thought that evening would pass like any other family dinner, Mom talking about neighbors, Dad reading the paper, or quietly shaking his head at anything I shared about my work. But no, this time Mom decided to lay down a new rule. I looked up, meeting her gaze. Under the yellow light, her eyes were cold, resolute, as if I were a tenant, not her daughter. Maybe then you'll learn respect, she continued, setting her spoon down with finality. Respect? I'd spent countless sleepless nights chugging cheap coffee in 24-hour diners, editing videos for small clients. I'd raced deadlines until my eyes were bloodshot, my hands trembling, yet still pushed through every frame. To Mom, all that effort was just lazy, useless. I opened my mouth to explain, but Dad cut me off with his usual sarcasm. Dreams don't pay bills, Lena. You need to grow up. He didn't look at me, just twirled his beer glass, lips curling into a faint, bitter smile. In that smile, I saw both indifference and a trace of something he probably didn't even recognize himself. The room grew heavy. The clink of cutlery against plates sounded hollow, out of place. I sat there, my heart twisting, but my face stayed calm. I knew reacting would only make things worse. My silence seemed to irritate Mom even more. She tilted her head, watching me as if waiting for an outburst. But I didn't explode. I stayed quiet, letting each accusation carve itself into my mind. My name is Lena, 24, a freelance content creator. I make promotional videos for small flower shops, family-owned clothing stores, anyone who believes visuals can tell a story. The work doesn't make me rich, but it feels like I'm touching my dreams. I love spending hours at my screen, piecing together footage, adding melodies. Each completed project makes me feel more alive. But my parents never saw it that way. To them, my career was a game, a waste of time. Mom once asked, "You spent 4 years in college to make petty videos for small shops? And you call that a career?" Dad preferred mockery. What big company would hire you? Or are you just going to sit in coffee shops, cutting clips, dreaming of Hollywood? At first, I laughed it off. I thought if I stayed patient, one day when I succeeded, they'd understand. But over time, their words became a burden. I started avoiding sharing, hiding my small contracts, even my joy. Whenever work came up, I got a frown or a sigh. That dinner, everything crossed a line. When Mom declared I had to pay rent, it felt like my own family was evicting me. I was their daughter. How could I be treated like a tenant in our home? I swallowed a bite of cold food, staring at my hands. My knuckles trembled slightly, but I stayed silent. That silence in that moment was louder than any rebuttal. Mom turned away, Dad snorted, and the room sank into a heavy quiet. I heard the ticking of the wall clock, each second reminding me my time here was up. In my heart, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. That night, alone in my room, I opened my laptop but couldn't edit a single frame. Mom's and Dad's voices echoed. Dreams don't pay bills, you need to pay rent. I remembered the times I tried sharing small joys. A client praising my video, doubled view counts, my first PayPal payment. Each time they brushed it off. Just luck. No one lives off that. I felt like a shadow in my own home, present yet invisible. But deep inside, another voice rose. If they don't believe in you, prove it yourself. I didn't know what tomorrow held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't stay here to endure more mockery. From childhood, I thought family was the safest place. Growing up, I learned not every house is a haven. Some homes have every comfort but lack understanding. Some meals have every dish but no love. I didn't want to live in that suffocation anymore. I needed air to breathe, space to be free, challenges to test my strength. I'm sharing this not to complain. I believe many of you, somewhere, have felt this. Belittled, dismissed, your passion brushed off as unrealistic. Maybe you've heard parents, friends, or society say, "Stop dreaming, live like everyone else." But if everyone follows the same path, where's the room for unique dreams? If you're in that place, I want to tell you, you're not alone. I've been there, sitting at a cold dinner table, swallowing tears, vowing never to let anyone define my worth again. And that was just the beginning. In the chapters to come, I'll tell you about the rainy night I left, the early days adrift in the city, how I clung to my last few dollars. There'll be moments of despair and unexpected turning points. Most importantly, there's the surprising hospital conversation with my dad, where he confessed his fears and I learned what forgiveness truly means. If you see yourself in this story, stay with me. Maybe my journey will help you find your own strength. If it resonates, drop a comment below to share with me. I'll never forget the moment I closed my bedroom door. The small room, filled with familiar things, suddenly felt alien, like a storage unit without warmth. The dim desk lamp cast my trembling shadow. In the mirror, my face was gaunt, eyes red and swollen, but my gaze was sharp in a way I hadn't seen before. I knew it was time to choose. Stay and face more disdain or step out to find myself. And I pulled an old canvas bag from under the bed, folding hoodies one by one. Each wasn't just fabric, but armor for long days editing in freezing coffee shops. I packed them neatly, as if preparing for battle. My camera, my companion, and the hard drive holding my breath of work, I caressed before tucking them in. On top, I placed my grandma's faded denim jacket, worn, frayed at the shoulders, but to me, it was a talisman. She'd said, "When you wear it, you won't feel afraid." Each item was a heartbeat. Each zip of the bag was a declaration. I wasn't staying to wait for acceptance. I was leaving to prove myself. As I stepped out, I saw Mom's silhouette in the doorway. The hallway light cast a cold, tired shadow on her face. "Don't be dramatic, Lena," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. I gripped the bag's strap, replying softly, "I'm not. I'm doing exactly what I need to." Dad didn't look at me, his voice drifting from the living room, mixed with the evening news. "Lock the door before midnight or mosquitoes will get in." I paused for a second, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "I always meet my deadlines on time." I placed my keys on the shelf by the door. They glinted under the light like coins left on a grave. Outside, rain began to fall. Not a downpour, but fine silver threads, like tiny needles. I pulled on my jacket, slung the bag over my shoulder, and stepped out. The street was empty, streetlights blurred in the rain, as if the city was testing me before letting me start a new chapter. On the way to the bus stop, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Don't be stupid, you'll come crawling back, you can't survive alone." I froze. Those words hit harder than the rain on the awning. A small, tired part of me whispered, "Maybe she's right. You'll go back, like always." But memories flooded in. I recalled being compared to Mom's friends' kids. "That girl's got a bank job, what about you?" I remembered Dad's look when I shared a client's praise. "Just luck, Lena. Tomorrow they'll find someone else." I remembered sitting at the dinner table, choking down food, hearing words that chipped away at my self-worth. If I went back, I'd live those days again. I'd forever be the burden child. I gripped my phone, let the screen go dark, and left the text behind. The bus stop at Pine and Alder glowed faintly under flickering fluorescent lights. An old man in a raincoat sat on a bench, tapping his knee, humming a tune. I stood a few steps away, clutching my bag, heart pounding. To my parents, I was probably committing a crime, daring to leave before being kicked out. The bus pulled up slowly, its door hissing open. I stepped on, feeding coins into the slot. The driver glanced at me briefly. No questions, no judgment. That indifference felt like freedom. I took a seat near the back, hugging my bag like it held my entire life. Outside, rain streaked the window in faint lines. In the reflection, I saw myself. Wet hair plastered to my cheeks, tired eyes, but a spark I thought had died long ago. I pulled out a small notebook from my bag. Inside were old receipts, half-finished notes, and sketches for projects I'd never dared send. I flipped to a blank page, grabbed a pen, and wrote, "This isn't the end, this is proof. Proof I dared to leave. Proof I wouldn't accept being belittled. Proof I believed in myself even if my parents didn't." The bus rumbled on. The city blurred outside, but inside me, something ignited. You know, sometimes the hardest step isn't the long road ahead, but deciding to leave the threshold that's held you back too long. I didn't know what the future held, whether I'd afford rent, if clients would keep coming. But I knew one thing. I chose to stand up for myself. The only question now was, would that choice lead to freedom or a bigger storm? If my story grips you, comment why to let me know you're with me. If not, N is fine too, at least I know you're listening. That first night away from home, I learned a harsh truth. It wasn't the rain or the dark that made me feel lost. It was the silence. I huddled in a corner of a 24-hour diner in downtown Columbus. The smell of grease, the clatter of dishes, and the tired laughter of long-haul truckers surrounded me. I had one bag, a few coins, and a fear swelling in my chest. I stared at the menu, pretending to read, while my stomach growled. I didn't dare order anything but a free glass of water. That's when a middle-aged waitress, her hair streaked with gray, set a steaming coffee in front of me. "You look like you've had the longest day of your life," she said, her eyes kind. "Drink up, it's on the house. Everyone here needs a coffee to pick themselves up." I looked up, my throat tight. A small gesture, but in that moment of vulnerability, it was a flickering light in the dark. I smiled, my trembling hands cradling the warm mug, clinging to the last shred of kindness the world offered. Reality hit fast. Leaving the diner the next morning, I had nowhere to go. No apartment, no room, just a few bucks in my pocket. The city was a vast maze, gleaming glass buildings, people rushing by, and me lost in the crowd. I told myself, if I dared to leave my old home, I couldn't crumble in the first week. I had to do something. I remembered a co-working space I'd read about online, a hub for freelancers. I made my way there, hopeful yet terrified. The glass doors slid open, and I was overwhelmed by bright lights, the clack of keyboards, and focused faces. I approached the reception, clutching my last $20 bill. Just one day, I said. The receptionist took the money, unbothered by my rain-soaked hair or faded jacket. In her indifference, I found relief. Here I was just another freelancer. I picked an empty desk in the corner, opened my laptop, connected to Wi-Fi, and took a deep breath. Ahead of me was a chasm of worry, rent, food, the future, but also opportunity, internet, email, potential clients out there. That first day I sent dozens of emails, each line written with desperation, introducing myself, sharing my portfolio, attaching short clips. I knew 90% would go unanswered, but one nod, one small chance, would keep me going. That afternoon, a reply came. A local flower shop wanted a promotional video for Valentine's Day. Not much money, but a sign I hadn't been abandoned. I hugged my laptop, feeling like I'd found a drop of water in a desert. The joy was brief. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. "Don't come crawling back when you fail. No one out there will support you." I stared at the words. In the past, they'd have broken me, left me crying. But today, in a room lit with possibility, surrounded by people chasing their dreams, I laughed. Not out of spite, but with the realization I'd overcome an old fear. I thought, "Thank you, Dad. Your doubt is my fuel to prove you wrong." That evening, I left the co-working space, trudging along wet sidewalks. The city glowed, cars zipped by, people laughed in bars, while I carried my heavy bag, unsure where I'd sleep. I settled on a park bench, opened my notebook. Under a streetlight I wrote, "Day 1, I'm still here, I'm still fighting. No one can call me a burden anymore." Fear lingered, the cold, hunger, uncertainty, but with it came a new belief. I was free to choose my path, however rough. The days that followed were a cycle. Finding temporary shelter, working at the co-working space, sending emails, editing videos. Money dwindled, but small contracts trickled in. A family clothing store, an old bookstore. They needed simple videos, and their payments kept me breathing. Some nights, I curled up in cheap motels, listening to traffic, Dad's voice echoing, "Dreams don't pay bills." But the next morning, opening my laptop to positive replies, I'd smile, "Dreams are starting to pay." Strangely, the more challenges I faced, the stronger I felt. Those cold family dinners made me feel worthless. But now, in a strange city, every dollar earned by my own hands showed me my true worth. I learned, freedom isn't easy. It's the right to choose and the responsibility to bear the consequences. But that's what made me feel alive. If you're listening this far, you've probably felt that moment, When every door behind you slams shut, leaving only one path forward. It's terrifying, but it's also your chance to grow. My first week ended with a truth. I still didn't have a real home. But I had work, clients, proof my choice wasn't crazy. Most importantly, I had faith, something I'd been stripped of for years. I'll never forget that morning, opening my laptop to an email subject that made my heart leap. Partnership proposal, Cleveland Marketing Group. For a moment, I thought I was seeing things. I reread it, fearing a prank or spam. But no, it was a formal letter from a mid-sized marketing firm in Cleveland. They'd stumbled across a video I'd made, shared on social media, and were impressed by its creativity and emotion. They wanted me to collaborate on a campaign for a local brand. I sat frozen, a strange mix of disbelief, trembling excitement, and validation that my struggles weren't in vain. 3 months after leaving home, I survived on small gigs. Videos for flower shops, clips for used bookstores, even editing a wedding video for a young couple. They didn't pay much, but they gave me reasons to wake up, to believe I wasn't the useless kid Dad mocked. Slowly, I built regular clients. They referred friends who needed someone reliable and dedicated. I wasn't just selling videos, I was selling trust that their stories would be told authentically. Those small gigs had unexpectedly brought my work to a bigger company's attention. The day I signed with Cleveland Marketing, I wore Grandma's old denim jacket. Still frayed, faded blue, but I wore it like armor. Leaving the meeting with my first official contract, I felt transformed. I wasn't the girl shivering in a 24-hour diner with a free coffee. I was someone building a life with trembling hands. With the first payment, I rented a small studio in downtown Columbus. Barely enough room for a bed, a desk, and some old shelves. But to me, it was a castle. I hung Grandma's jacket by the door. Every time I came home, seeing it reminded me, you escaped the dark, and this is your flag of freedom. But as I built my own world, my parents' attitudes shifted. A text from Mom. Where are you? Why haven't you said anything? We can talk this out. Then Dad, no longer mocking but concerned. You don't have to do this alone. Come home. We'll figure it out. Messages piled up. Calls came relentlessly. I watched my phone light up, go dark, light up again. In the past, I'd craved those calls. Just one acknowledgement would have made me feel seen. Now, arriving too late, they left me calm. Silence became my weapon. I chose not to respond. Not out of hatred, but because I knew answering would pull me back into the old cycle of justifying my worth. For the first time, I wasn't the child begging for validation. They, who'd belittled me, were now waiting for my reply. I realized the psychological power had shifted, and I wasn't ready to give it up. That evening, I sat by my studio's window, watching city lights stretch like an artificial sea of stars. My laptop glowed with stacked work emails, but a question echoed. Was this silence the only way to keep my freedom? Part of me wanted to forgive, to say, I'm okay, Mom and Dad. I found my path. But another part warned, don't let go too soon. Let them see you're not the old Lena. That inner conflict kept me up many nights. But each morning, seeing sunlight stream through my window, I knew, however painful, I was living my own life. I share this because I believe some of you have felt it too. When silence stops being weakness and becomes the only way to protect a heart hurt too many times. If someone's made you feel like the extra in your own family, remember, you have the right to walk away, to stay silent, to build a world where your worth is honored. Time passed, and the Cleveland marketing contract wrapped up successfully. More offers came, and money stopped being a daily worry. But just when I thought I had control, a text from my brother turned everything upside down. Lena, Dad's in the hospital. His heart's weak. The doctor says to prepare. I froze. In an instant, my tiny studio felt too big, too cold. Did my silence still matter when the person I resented most was lying in a hospital bed? My phone buzzed one autumn afternoon while I was finishing a project for Cleveland Marketing. My brother's name flashed on the screen. My heart clenched, sensing this wasn't a normal call. Lena. His voice trembled. Dad's in the hospital. His heart's bad. The doctor says, prepare yourself. The world went quiet. The sound of keyboards around me in the co-working space faded to a distant hum. For a moment, I saw Dad's face from that fateful dinner. Cold eyes, mocking smile. Now that man was on a hospital bed, possibly facing death. I was torn. Half of me screamed, "Don't go! He rejected you, hurt you. He doesn't deserve your care." The other half trembled. "He's still your dad. If he dies and you don't go, will you ever forgive yourself?" I sat motionless for nearly an hour, tears falling onto my keyboard. Finally, I closed my laptop, packed my bag, and took a bus to the hospital. The cardiology ward of Columbus's City Hospital was cold, reeking of antiseptic. My palms were sweaty as I walked the long hallway. My brother ran up, eyes red. "Thank God you came. Dad, he wants to see you." I stood outside his room, chest tight. Through the frosted glass, I saw Dad, frailer than ever. His face was gaunt, skin pale, lips tinged blue. Tubes ran from his arm, the heart monitor beeping steadily but faintly. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. He opened his eyes, looking at me. Gone was the coldness, replaced by exhaustion and something like regret. We stayed silent for a long time, only the machine's hum between us. I didn't know what to say. All the bottled-up accusations melted away, leaving an emptiness. His voice, hoarse and slow, broke the silence. "Lena, I was scared you'd fail." I blinked, stunned. He coughed softly, then continued. "I was afraid you'd suffer, that you'd fall if you dreamed too big. So I pushed you to live like me, safe, stable. But I only hurt you more." Each word tore through the air. My heart trembled. Was this the man who scoffed at my first project? Who said dreams don't pay bills? Now he admitted. His harshness wasn't hate, but fear. Tears spilled. I grabbed his hand, thin and cold. Choking, I said, "I don't blame you. I just needed you to believe I'm strong enough for my own path." A flicker of relief passed through his eyes, like a lifelong burden lifted. He nodded weakly, saying no more. That was enough to know. The gap between us was bridged, fragile but real. I sat by his bed for hours, telling him about my flower shop videos, bookstore clips, the Cleveland marketing deal. He listened, no interruptions, no sarcasm, just quiet, his eyes following my words. For the first time, I felt truly heard. When a nurse came to check the machines, I stood, looking at Dad again. In his eyes, I saw not just illness, but remorse. And strangely, instead of hate, I felt an unfamiliar forgiveness. That evening, leaving the hospital, I looked up at Columbus's sky. Golden leaves fell on wet sidewalks. I realized forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it opens a door to a new present. I visited the hospital often after that, bringing my laptop to show Dad my work. He didn't judge, just smiled weakly, sometimes nodding. Those were moments I never thought I'd have. Then a thought struck. If Dad recovered, would I be brave enough to invite my parents to my tiny studio? To show them how I live? To have a real family dinner? I stood in my small studio, hands on a hastily set dining table. An old wooden table, mismatched chairs, a simple tablecloth. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, built by my own hands. Today, Dad was discharged, and I'd invited my parents for dinner. My heart pounded. I didn't know if this was brave or foolish. But after days by Dad's bedside, hearing his fears and seeing his regret, I knew. If I didn't try opening a door, we'd stay divided by walls forever. A knock came. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Mom stood there holding a homemade apple pie, her Thanksgiving staple. Dad stood beside her, weaker than before, but his eyes held a rare gentleness. "Come in," I said, voice trembling. We sat at the table. No one spoke at first. Just the soft clink of cutlery, the sound of ladling soup I'd made. A simple meal, chicken soup, salad, toasted bread. But to me it was more than food, it was a test. The air was awkward at first. Mom glanced around my studio, her eyes scanning the desk piled with hard drives, my camera, scribbled notebooks. I braced for criticism, but she only sighed, then nodded. "You've managed this on your own, that's good." Dad sat quietly, sipping water now and then. I didn't know what he thought. Old fears crept up. If this dinner failed, everything we'd built in the hospital would vanish. Then something unexpected happened. As Mom cut the apple pie, her knife slipped, making the first slice uneven, Messy. She flushed, trying to fix it, but Dad laughed. You never could cut straight, he said, his voice light. Mom looked at him, then laughed too. I watched, my heart feeling like a window had been flung open, letting in a breeze. I laughed along. There we were, three people, laughing over a misshapen pie slice. Sometimes, happiness isn't from grand achievements, but from small moments where silence turns to laughter. Watching my parents, I realized forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can open a door to a new present. After dinner, we cleaned up together. Mom washed dishes, Dad wiped the table, I stacked chairs. That simple scene made me want to cry. I didn't know what tomorrow held, but tonight, we chose to stand closer. As they prepared to leave, Dad paused at the door. He looked around my studio again, then turned to me. I didn't think you could do it, but you did. I'm proud. Those three words, I'm proud, were worth more than any contract. I nodded, afraid to speak, my voice on the verge of breaking. Mom placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. You're stronger than we thought. Keep going, Lena. The door closed behind them, leaving me in my quiet studio, but not alone. I sat at my desk, opening my laptop. The screen lit up, reflecting my face, eyes still wet but resolute. Behind me, the clink of dishes lingered, an echo of our simple dinner. A truth echoed in my heart. Respect isn't begged for, it's built with grit and strengthened by forgiveness. Looking back, I see the greatest value wasn't in the contracts I signed or the studio I rented, but in daring to defend my dreams and opening my heart to forgive. I learned respect doesn't come from pleading, but from unwavering resolve and standing tall even when belittled. I also realized forgiveness is the greatest gift, not to excuse past wrongs, but to free your heart from resentment. This story isn't just mine. Maybe there's a Lena in you, belittled, hurt, but yearning to live true to yourself. If you feel that connection, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and follow my channel to share more stories of resilience, love, and family. Because sometimes, one story is enough to spark someone's courage to keep going.